The future right will be anti-capitalist. Quite a bold statement, I know. And it's not just clickbait. I know it might ruffle a few feathers. But I ask you to actually hear me out and the points I want to make here, rather than jumping to conclusions that I'm a communist or something like that. That's not the point I'm trying to make. What the point I'm trying to make is, I don't really believe the left and right exists anymore. To all intents and purposes, of course, I am, quote, on the right in the modern spectrum. However, I've never really believed in the left-right dynamic. I first started to notice this many years ago when I was in London, and I went out for a meal with my girlfriend at the time and a couple who were friends of hers. And the fella that was the boyfriend of my girlfriend's friend was a big lefty, and he sort of got wind that, I was more on the right. And he almost wanted me to explain why I was right-wing, explain Thatcher to him. And this is the London left assumption about someone on the, quote, right. They think that if you're on the right, that means free markets, individualism, the, quote, managed decline of the North. Now, I suppose you can't blame the guy for that assumption. That very much is the Thatcherite Tory party. But I've never really identified with that side of the right, nor conservatism or Tory-style conservatism that much. I've always been more drawn to the right-wing romantic type, C.S. Lewis, Chesterton, Roger Scruton, the sort of people who look upon the aggression and mad dynamism and creative destruction of hyper-neoliberal capitalism with a sort of bemused skepticism. I've always felt more in the tradition of the English romantic poets who witnessed the, quote, dark satanic mills of modernity destroying England's green pastures. Now, I know that sounds quite idealistic, and I should make it clear that I can admire elements of modernity. I admire the vision of the inventor, for instance, and the bravery of the entrepreneur, that create lots of jobs and so on. I can even see the appeal of that lifestyle. It's just in my lifetime I feel I was born a bit too late to get into that great drive of Thatcherism, maybe even to benefit from it. Now, if you were around in the 80s, then let me know whether you think Thatcher was right or not. But I think I'm young enough to have been born into a different world, and that's probably why I tend to sympathise with some of the complaints that the Zoomer generation make, especially when they take lectures from boomers to pull their sleeves up and stop whining and crack on with it like they did. Now, I'm saying all of this because on Twitter, or X today, a post went semi-viral where a boomer-type figure was complaining about the state of modern young people, how they complain too much, and how in his day he roughed it out, he did the hard yards, he lived on basically nothing, saved for years, worked really hard and got his house and earned his way. Now, the point of this video isn't to deny this guy credit for what he did. It's a lot of balls, a lot of bravery, and fair enough. It's respectable what he did. And he might also be right that many young people, don't work hard enough, and maybe they should take more responsibility. Maybe youngsters are softer. But I do think that a lot of boomers don't understand that Zoomers especially, millennials to an extent, but especially Zoomers, are living in a reality that it's hard for them to truly grasp. Now, I experienced a perhaps smaller version of this with my own father. Now, I'm not trying to dig my father out. I love my father dearly, and I don't blame him for the advice he gave me. It was good advice. It's just the world had changed in my view. I remember saying to him, it's really hard when I left university, really hard to get a job. And it was very, very difficult. I had to work for free for a long time, intern, live on scraps to make my way. And my father's advice was just keep going, don't complain. You got to work harder than all the other people coming here and just keep cracking on. And you know what? In time it worked. But it does have something in there which I think modern young people feel, which is we're now competing for jobs, for houses, for bloody everything, with this infinite amount of Bomalians coming in from every corner of the earth. And it does make young people start to think, do I matter at all? Am I just interchangeable with, Mohammed from Pakistan and George from Nigeria? And the answer is to that, pretty much, yes. Yes, you are interchangeable. Your value is your economic worth. You're not really worth anything beyond that to the system. And that system has got inside of our bones and made us think that way too. I think maybe the boomer generation didn't have the competition with the international workforce to understand what it's like for young people now. That was the whole point behind the recent Elon Musk thing and H-1B visas. Of course, Indians were going to take those visas and take tech jobs in America. Lots of Americans were saying, well, hang on a minute, what about us? Isn't our country, isn't it supposed to be America first government? And Musk's point back was, yeah, but if we want to be number one, we've got to take in the best talent from around the world. We've got to be the best sports team we can be, yeah? Now, this debate took off because it got to the heart of how the older generation of the capitalist right think about a country and success, and how the younger generation of the right think about it. The older generation think we've got to be number one, go America. At any cost, let's just get the best people in and win. And what's winning? It's GDP. It's big name companies. It's being the most powerful economy in the world. But young people are starting to think, well, none of that's really worth anything if my job gets taken by someone who I don't even know from a country that's completely foreign to mine, and my town is being taken over by every single group from here to Timbuktu. And this is where I think there's a lack of understanding between boomer and zoomer. The boomers tend to think in Thatcherite terms, I can go out and achieve and become someone great. And that was true in their time. But they often don't realise that they had a culture underpinning them that was cohesive, homogenous. And now young people see the market in a very different way. They see it as something that is completely amoral. It doesn't care about who they are. It doesn't care about their identity. It doesn't care about their country. It will replace them in an absolute flash. It's like I say about liberalism very often. It's all well and good if it's underpinned by patriotism and even a sense of nationalism on the other side. Then you can keep things balanced, but that's not the system we have. We have a system of free reign, free market global capitalism. And what big business wants, big business gets. Now, it's this system that's created the economic situation that Britain finds itself in now. Yet on the surface, things are materially better. But in terms of what you can achieve in your lifetime, things have completely changed. The cost of living is out of control. We all know that. It's unaffordable if you're young. That's why so many young people are living with their parents still, much to the chagrin of boomers. On top of that, rent is out of control. House prices are out of control. A lot of young people know they will never own a house. Now, why is that? Of course, so many people have come here, there's so much demand on rent. On top of that, the international rich have bought houses in London because they view it as a safe asset. That pumps rents and house prices up even more. Now again, that's been okay for the boomer class because they've been able to sell their houses for huge profits that they often bought at much more reasonable prices. But for the zoomer class, it doesn't really mean anything. It just means they're left behind once again. On top of that, like I said earlier, when they start competing for jobs, they're hyper-competitive. Because again, we are ruled by an amoral capitalist system which just wants the best talent from wherever on the lowest wage it can possibly get. Another thing that I think boomers don't grasp about young people is the dating market now and what it's like. First of all, it's very toxic, and we've explored before the 80-20 rule. 20% of the best looking, the richest men tend to get 80% of the pick of the women. But on top of that, things like marriage and the structure of marriage and the importance of unions and loyalty to one another has gone. And I've experienced this in my time in London. I took a chance once to move from formal work into consulting. It meant I had to take a financial hit. And I remember at the time, a girl I was dating, she almost just lost total interest in me because, I wasn't where I needed to be financially. And that happened again after I was dating women. I was like, something's gone on here. And it's because young women have such a high expectation. Incidentally, this is also when I met my wife, and she did not judge me for that. She supported me. She was like, I think it's really great you're being ambitious and doing something that you actually want to do. Now, I knew that that was really rare. I was really thankful to meet someone like that. That's why I married her, or one of the reasons why I married her, because it's someone who actually believes in you. But a lot of young people today, they don't have that. They know they've got to be hitting really high to even get a solid girlfriend. All of this collectively is what I often call the cultural father. I wrote a piece on my Substack, check it out down below if you like, called Why Every Man Needs the Three Fathers to Be Stable. Also, a culture needs three fathers. That's an earthly father, they're like elders. A cultural father, which is your tradition, and then if you like a religious practice behind that. You don't have to get into that if you're not interested in it, but it feeds the cultural morals that we share. And this is what I'm getting to here. I think the boomers had that cultural father. It was more intact in their era. Whereas now, you have a lot of freedom, but there's nothing really holding us together anymore. Again, it's the free market. Everything is about competition in every single angle. And that's why I think increasingly young people are warming to the cultural arguments about identity. They're thinking, well, hang on, England is no longer England. And I feel I actually have roots here. But of course, the globalist system tells them, no, you don't. You're interchangeable with, again, some guy from India who just rocked up 3 weeks ago. Different in the eyes of the capitalist class. And on top of that, I think this is why we're seeing a turn away from the sort of Tony Robbins culture, which lasted from the 80s, the sort of Reaganomics of America, all the way through to the noughts. Because people are figuring out, okay, great, I can try and earn all this money, be the one person who does it, fulfills his dreams, becomes this amazing guy. Well, awesome. What's that really about? Well, you've earned a load of money. It's about individualism. Me, playing into the capitalist system, again, just being part of the problem. Now, I'm not trying to demean ambition and entrepreneurs. We need those people, but in the service of the whole rather than the service of the self. And again, this is why I think the American dream isn't quite working so much anymore. People have realized that only a select few can get extremely wealthy. And that's getting worse as inequality worsens across the West as well. You need the working and middle classes to keep everything ticking over. You need bin men, you need the milkman, you need people to work in shops, you need school teachers, and so on and so on. And someone's got to do that. And if all we're doing it for is so some individual can be stinking rich, people start thinking, well, what's the point in all of this? And again, the boomer response would be, well, it's so you can be in the land of the free markets, free ideas, free people, liberty, which again sounds great on paper, but that's not the reality for young people anymore. They look around and think, well, hang on, I'm being made a minority in my own country. I'm called a racist if I object against it. It's hard to get a job. I'm never going to get on the housing ladder, and nobody's coming to help me. So, of course, they're starting to think differently about how the market impacts them. And naturally, this also means that ideas of nation are returning, ideas of what does it mean to belong to something. Now, of course, the globalist clique, the mainstream media, the Keir Starmers of the world, they just think that's far right. And that's because, one, they're leftists and ideologically they want to be opposed to what they see as evil, but it's also because they don't understand it. They don't know why young people are being pulled this way. And of course, they're shills for the system anyway. But what this national idea, and I think this is why it's gaining in popularity and people are turning away from the more free market ideas, is because it tells young men that you actually matter, that you belong to something, that you're part of something, that you could work together with someone and maybe build something with your countrymen, with your people. Now again, I'm not even saying this as a nationalist. I can really sympathise with why it appeals to young people. I'm more of a traditionalist. I believe personally that traditionalism has that transcendence that stops nationalism going unruly. It's maybe a topic for another video. But I get why young people are drawn to it, because it's offering them something new and different, which actually seeks to protect them, and values them. Now, this is why I think that the capitalist powers that be, the neoliberal powers that be, the globalists, are going to learn a very difficult lesson. And it's the same when the communists learned about 100 years ago. And that's that people aren't motivated by economic systems. When it really comes down to it, they're not even that motivated by individual interest if everything around them crumbles, unless they've taken a psychopathic turn. What they're more interested in is their roots, their nation. This is why the communist countries, which were supposed to be these lands of equality where national ideals go out the window, well, they never really did that. The Soviet Union became increasingly patriotic. Same with China, even now. And the reason for that is that it holds the people together. It motivates the people, especially in times of crisis and war. Now, admittedly, I don't know what's coming next, but it seems to me that the model of the 80s is ending. The Blairite model is ending. Wokeism doesn't really offer young people anything in the long run. So there is going to be something new which is born. There simply has to be, or there'll be some form of chaos. Now, as I say, it's very much a mission of mine to try and aid men, especially in that journey of renewal. I'm doing that in the Substack because I do believe that a revolution of the self is the most important thing first. It's getting very difficult to deal with the feelings of decline, that you don't matter. And that can lead to all sorts of things, fear and anger and despair. I don't think that helps anybody at all. So I'm trying to, in my own small way, start to reverse that and reawaken some of the more traditional aspects of our life that have been lost. Do check that out down below if you're interested. I know this is a more of a bold statement I'm making here, but it's something I've witnessed for a while, and I'd be interested to know what you think down below. And do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new as well.